Today is October 21st, 2017. It is 11:05 a.m. This is Emily Brennan, representing the City of Savannah's Research Library and Municipal Archives. I am interviewing Theresa Wexel for the City of Savannah's Ardmore History Roundup Day project. We are conducting this interview at the historic Gould Cottage, now a part of the Habersham School. Today we will be discussing the history of the Ardmore neighborhood and the surrounding community. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Wexel.
Glad to be here.
Okay, will you let us start by having you tell us your full name, please?
Theresa Wexel.
Okay, and would you allow us to have your middle name as well?
Theresa Claire Wexel.
Thank you. Tell us about when you were born.
I was born in 1952 in the city of Savannah. Grew up in the Savannah Sugar Refinery when there was a mill village there, and moved into the historic downtown Savannah in 1970 when I was 17 years old. Lived there for about 10 years, and then to Ardsley Park and lived on 53rd Street for a while. Left Savannah for quite a few years and came back, and have lived on 55th Street, 401 East 55th, for about 21 years.
Okay. Can you tell us about what it was like growing up in the neighborhood that you grew up in?
Savannah Sugar Refinery was founded in around 1920. There's a lot of history there. And as with a lot of companies, they built a village around the plant for the workers. And as far as I recall, it was a great place to grow up. Most of the people there were of Cajun descent because they came to Savannah with the people who founded the plant from Louisiana. My father, who was German and had landed in Louisiana, and came with them.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about where you went to school?
I was Catholic. There were a lot of my father was German. There were a lot of Catholics in the Cajun area of Port Wentworth, which is why there's also a Catholic church there at the entrance to the Savannah Sugar Refinery. I went to Cathedral Day School, which was next to the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in downtown Savannah.
Okay, and what is your current address?
401 East 55th Street.
Okay. And you said you've lived there about 21 years?
About, yes. Before that, I lived on 53rd Street.
Okay. And what neighborhood do you identify as living in? Like Ardsley Park, Chatham Crescent, Ardmore?
Ardmore, Ardsley area. I believe if I recall correctly, you can correct me, that the Lattimores who established the layout of Ardsley Park, not long after that also established the layout of Ardmore and other neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's correct. Before today or before the registration of Ardsley Park, have you heard of the neighborhood being called Ardmore?
Yes.
Okay. And more specifically about your house, what do you know about the history of it?
It was built around 1927. It was one of the first houses in a subdivision type neighborhood built this far out. At the time it was built, the streetcar line was already there, the one that comes up Batty and 55th Street. And I do not know the names of the original owners. I suspect I am the third owner.
Okay. And do you know of any of the kind of important leaders or prominent citizens of the neighborhood between then and now?
Oh, I probably do, but there are too many to name. I don't want to favor one over the other. This is Savannah, after all.
Oh, that's true. And do you know of any significant events that took place in the neighborhood?
I guess they're all significant. I can't think of one. The things that jump out at me may not jump out at other people. In this neighborhood proper, Ardmore, it was a subdivision, so lots of kids grew up here.
Okay. And do you know what it was like for the kids growing up in Ardmore? Have you spoke with any of them about their experiences?
No, but I'm going to encourage someone to come and speak with you if she has a chance today.
Okay.
I think she grew up in the area.
And do you know anything about the history of Hull Park?
Well, Hull Park, before it was a children's playground. I'm not sure what it was used for other than it was a park. And the layout of it kind of works with the layout of the streets. It was a foundation and a corner of actually Ardsley Park and Ardmore when it was all laid out. I mean, this was kind of south, and the streetcar just went along the edge of Hull Park, diagonally over towards De Lesseps, I imagine.
Okay. About how far would you say your house is from the streetcar line where it used to lay?
30 feet.
Really? That's really close.
Well, it was in the street, and we're on the setback line.
Yeah. From
Maybe.
when you moved in to the area, do you notice any major differences between what the streets were like, or if they're different today?
Well, of course, there's a lot more traffic. When I moved into the area, would have been in the 80s originally, because it was after downtown. Yeah, and the north-south minor streets were all unpaved. Atlantic was not paved. There's no reason to pave the streets. Atlantic, Batty, Cedar, all unpaved.
Okay.
A true Georgian lives just off of a dirt road.
And what are some of your favorite memories of living in Ardmore?
Oh, raising my daughter, ease of getting around, convenient for anybody to stop by. Can ride bicycles, run, play.
Okay. Is there any other stories that you would like to share with us about growing up or about living in Ardmore?
I can't think of anything. I mean, there's a lot of trivia, but and I'm trying to think if there's something of historic significance.
Or just anything you'd like to share with us is fine.
Oh, I think sharing with the cares and concerns of the people who live here about trying to keep it a livable neighborhood. I think it's an important, and glad to see it remains important.
Okay.
So I might pop in, and since my voice is on tape, I'm going to say who I am. So I'm Luciana Spraker, the director of the city's Research Library and Municipal Archives. And this is off topic, but you did bring up the Savannah Sugar Refinery area, and it's Cajun Community, and that's an interesting topic. So I would just like to ask a little bit about that, because I hadn't heard about the Cajun Community, and so I just would ask you maybe to elaborate a little bit more about that. I had never heard about the Cajun Community. Could you just talk a little bit more about that?
Well, as I said, the folks who established the Savannah Sugar Refinery were from Louisiana. Of course, they probably had some partners up here, and this was they probably started around right after World War I. My father came to America prior to World War I, so he was, young man, anxious to get out and about, and so he moved when he was working down there in the sugarcane fields, and moved up here with the Cajuns. At that time out there, now you can look up the names of the people, the Oxnards and others who, were had controlling interest in the factory. My father helped to bring it online. Of course, there were a lot of people out there working. And when you hear names like Seminole and Boulware around town, Cobbler, of course that's more of a French name, but there are quite a few Cajun names around town. That's where a lot of them came from.
So, and your father's name was what?
His name was Wexel, Joseph Wexel.
Wexel. And so he immigrated from Germany to Louisiana, and
Via probably New York.
New York, and then from Louisiana to Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. So I wish I could tell you more about the sugar refinery, but I was a child, and it was laid out 4 streets. It was also segregated at the time. At a time when things were considered separate but equal. 2 streets were African Americans, 2 streets were white. Everybody had an equal park, and equal housing was pretty much similar. When there was an event, a banquet, everything was equal and with a rope down the middle.
What about, thinking about the separate but equal, you went to Catholic schools. Were they also segregated, or were they integrated?
At that time, yes, they were. Was it St. Pius was African American.
Okay. Now, getting back to Ardmore, when you moved in the 80s, what was the tree canopy like?
A lot of pecan trees is what I recall, because and one would have been planted in the back of each house, and you still see them occasionally. There's one there's several on 53rd Street, and there are still a few of them around on 55th and 54th Street, and they just sit right in the middle of the backyard. And some of them are now like huge.
Well, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Emily.
Can I jump in? I have to say my name right?
Yes.
Okay, this is Katie Fitzhugh. I'm a grad student at SCAD with Emily. Miss Wexler, I just have some questions for you. You said that you raised your daughter in Ardmore? What schools did she go to?
She attended Blessed Sacrament. Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, which is part of Ardsley Park.
Okay. Is that also a religious school? I guess it's
yes, a
called
Catholic
Blessed.
school on the corner of Victory and Waters.
Okay, that's awesome. Did they have lots of neighborhood events, and did multiple people from Ardmore go to school there that you know of? Okay.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of people. The Catholic community in particular, but there would also be non-Catholics, would go to that school or Charles Ellis or to Jacob G. Smith School as elementary school.
Very fun. I'm new to Savannah, so I'm learning all of these new things from you. I appreciate it. How old is your daughter now?
Oh, 30.
Does she live in Savannah as well?
Yes.
Where does she live?
Oh, she lives on the south side.
Oh, okay. Is that also historic? I don't know. I'm new to Savannah. All right. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. Sorry. You mentioned that the sugar refinery was segregated as well. When you moved to Ardmore, did you notice any racial definitions or diversions?
What I noticed was that pretty early on, it was acceptable for people of color to move into the neighborhood, although it took a lot of effort for the older people, although I could tell they thought this might be right, but had concerns about it. That's, back in the 70s or the 80s is when I moved here. Because of their background, they would be concerned, but they didn't resist it. Which I thought was interesting, at least the people I came into contact with. So, you don't see a lot of people, but there are a lot of people of color who live in Ardmore, in the Ardsley area now.
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was something that was prominent back then in the 80s.
It wasn't prominent at all.
Okay.
No.
Perfect.
But
well, that was just what I had for you. Thank you.
And could you tell us a little bit more about where the people worked who lived in Ardmore at the time?
I had probably all over. It was a very mixed neighborhood. You had engineers and doctors. You had a lot of, when I moved here, there were a lot of retired people who have, long since passed away. So, they could have worked for Continental Can, Union Camp, Gulfstream, banking industry, a lot of people in banking and insurance industries here. So it's a diverse group of people.
And where did you work?
I've worked for a couple of engineering firms here in town, and I've worked for myself for about 25 years.
Well, thank you for sharing your memories of Ardmore and Savannah with us today.
Thank you.